Welcome back to Secret Weapons. My name is Mark Johnston, and if this is your first time here, this is a YouTube channel where we do gear demos and reviews, as well as studio tips and tricks for leveling up your writing, production, and playing from the perspective of a guitar player in a home studio. If that sounds interesting to you, I would love it if you hit that like and subscribe button and stick around for future videos. Today we're taking a look at the Mask Audio Electronics and Collector Emitter collaboration, the Cascader Fuzz. Before we get into anything, if you haven't seen my video on the Mask Audio Park Garden Germanium, I want to put a link in the description down below. I would highly recommend you go at least check out the intro song for that, because I think it provides some very valuable context for this video, which is the realization that I think Mask Audio makes some of my favorite drive pedals. And the interesting thing there is they're very hairy and angular and a little bit strange in places in a way that I wouldn't assume would be like a go-to sound for me. But between this video and that video, I think that they may be two of my best songs I've written in the last year and a half. And if we're not judging gear by the quality of art they pull out of us, then what are we even doing? There's a testament to how well designed this thing is in the fact that all you have is one knob, a switch, and two foot switches. And the workflow here is incredibly simple and yet works across a bunch of really interesting applications. You have your knob at the top, which is just labeled loud. And all it is a volume output. There is basically, as far as I can tell, a fixed fuzz amount in this thing. And then you just increase or decrease the amount of output on the pedal, which obviously in a tube amp environment means that you can get more distortion by running this fuzz and pressing your preamp tubes harder. So obviously you can get more overall distortion out of your board and amp context, but all this has is just more and less volume. Underneath that is the Yuh knob. And in the left position, it is disengaged, and in the right, it engages effectively a really aggressive noise gate. And it is worth stating at this point that when that thing is engaged and the pedal is in kind of like on but no cascade mode, lower output pickups are going to have a harder time opening that gate up in ways that feel sustained and full-bodied. So there are two solutions there. Solution number one is going to be a boost pedal, a compressor with a volume increase or something ahead of this thing. And solution two is that secondary foot switch at the bottom, the Cascade knob, which adds an additional gain stage at the front of the pedal that cascades more fuzz into the primary fuzz circuit, therefore cranking that gate wide open more easily for conventional guitar pickups. It's at that point that it's worth noting this is a very messy, loud, spitty, angry fuzz in certain contexts. If you have that gate turned off and you have that cascade turned on, this thing is going to just be a noisy beast. And you can either lean in, which is a totally valid way of approaching a device like this, or you can kick that Yuh to the right side and end up with this really well-tuned gate that opens and closes pretty much exactly when you want it to, but gives you this great, smooth, sustained, zippery, gated fuzz sound. But outside of this immediately being really, really resonant for me on guitar, as you heard on that intro track, we use this on all of our bass tracks, and it will go on the baseboard for sound samples at the end of this video. And I think that this is going to live on the baseboard for the foreseeable future. This is that bass fuzz sound that I always think I'm going to want and I can never make work in a mix. My only thing about that will be I'm probably going to have to grab something like the Damnation Audio Dirt Fixer and put this in that loop so that I can get a little bit more low end back. This thing will not give you the total amount of low end you probably want for your bass if you use it by itself, but with a parallel clean blend, I think this is going to be just an absolute miracle worker on bass fuzz applications. So before we get into our sound samples, I want to point something out. You're going to hear me in multiple situations refer to this switch as loud mode or Yuh mode. And that is partially just because I was just looking at the switch and not paying attention to the labeling because that top knob is just so obviously volume. So even though I'm kind of misrepresenting the names of this switch right here, I actually do think that the loud and Yuh kind of work in that context because the left position really does feel louder because there's no gate, and the right position does have that gate engaged. And when you have that cascade turned on, as I said earlier, When it's in that left position, this thing just is loud. It is white noisy and spitty and crazy. And when you turn it to that right position, it gets nice and controlled and constrained again in all the right ways. So let's give this thing a listen on guitar and on bass. And just once more, for emphasis, Mask, this is very, very good. This is a phenomenal little fuzz pedal. As always, before we get into our sound samples, let's talk through our signal chain and the context we're working in. I am playing my Squier J Mascis Jazzmaster, loaded up with Ristretto P90s by Lambertone pickups. We're going into the 29 Pedals EUNA, the Cali 76 compressor, and the Mask Cascader. From there, we go to the 1981 Inventions LVL, the Strymon Volante, the Chase Bliss Gravitas Tremolo, and the Quiet Theory Prelude. We go out to our amplifier, which is my Benson Monarch Plus, into the Universal Audio aux, which we're using for cabinets, and then onto our DAW, which is Universal Audio's Luna, where I'm using a Neve 1073 for the preamp gain. Here is our clean tone. So we have a pretty clean bass line here, a very kind of neutral, pleasant guitar, kind of clean tone here. And that's because, as you could hear from that intro, that Cascader really does a lot of everything in this context. So we're going to start things off by moving back over to the loud position. The one knob at noon, Cascade turned off, which is that secondary gain stage. And we're going to start off by just turning on the pedal. As you can hear, there's a ton of volume. There's a lot of sustain. Even with a Jazzmaster, which is really impressive, and a Jazzmaster with like a stock bridge, not even something special like a mastery or anything like that. As we've discussed, the knob is purely volume. It is not any additional gain. That is kind of what you will get from just hitting your amp harder and or adding that second gain stage. So let's just kind of like walk through how it sounds as you kind of dial it back and dial it up. In its kind of bass level, just left position toggle knob right at or above noon, you just get, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, just one of the best crazy fuzz sounds that I have come across in my fairly admittedly limited fuzz experimentation. Let's get into some of the weirder stuff here. So obviously you're hearing a ton of volume and sustain and kind of very open, uncompressed, just craziness right now. If you jump over to that yuh position, the right position on the toggle, you gate the fuzz. And in order to really open that gate, you kind of got to push a lot through it. Something like this Jazzmaster with its P90s actually does not do the trick on its own. And we will demonstrate that. And then we will bring in the Cali 76, which I am mostly just using, as you can tell by the dry volume position on the knob, is boosting a lot of volume. And you will hear how that helps us actually get something valuable out of that right side for a kind of medium gain gated fuzz thing. As you can hear, my Jazzmaster really struggles to kind of get those notes out. So let's go ahead and disengage the Cascader and hear the volume difference between the Cali and no Cali. And now bring that gated fuzz back in. It helps you keep that gate open a little bit more easily. High output guitars will also kind of do that with a little bit less extra effort on part of other boosts and compressors and whatnot. But yeah, it's of the 4 positions in here, because there are effectively 4 positions. You have loud, stock, loud cascade, Yuh stock, Yuh cascade. I would argue that the Yuh position, no cascade, is probably the least usable thing unless you've got a really high output guitar or you're in the business of putting boosts ahead of your gated fuzz to really kind of like crank it back open again. But I would say that if you're doing that, you're better off bringing in that cascade. So let's jump back over to the loud position again and turn that cascade on, where things are going to get really, really hairy and squealy. And that would be true if I was using humbuckers or any other noise canceling pickup in this context as well. As you can hear, this is my pickup completely turned off right now, and you're still getting noise. You just got to lean in with a pedal like this. It's here for the chaos, and as I bring in the volume, and it's just unavoidable, and that's fine. Lean in. But you actually have the ability to take that cascaded dual gain stage and make it very, very usable. That cascade is set up perfectly to open up that Yuh position in just the best ways possible. I used this setting right here on like most of about half the guitars on the intro track because it just has so much like gravity to it. So no cascade. as you can hear, the gate works in great conjunction with that Cascade secondary gain stage to really kind of like give you the best of both worlds, where the gate is opening exactly when you want it to with not a lot of extra effort on your part, and simultaneously the gate is also keeping it closed to fight off a lot of that squealy craziness if that's not what you want out of a pedal like this, making it surprisingly usable in like studio contexts as well as live contexts. And between the two, what I would call really usable settings here, on one side, your loud no Cascade, and on the other side, the Yuh with Cascade, you get two different really, really kind of like usable sounds that both sound wonderful. A really great gated thing in this form, and then a really beautiful open kind of like crazy fuzz in the other form. Yeah, it's really cool to hear kind of both of those things. And as you heard on that intro track, let's hear it on bass. So let's take a look at Cascader on bass. I am playing my Jennings bass with a McNelly 1/4 pound single coil pickup. We are using the Cali 76 bass compressor by Origin, and our amplifier is the Super Vintage Bass Rig by Origin as well. We are going out of our DI output to a Universal Audio Solo 610 tube preamp. And so here's what kind of our clean tone sounds like. We are, of course, playing with a pick, as you can hear, and we're not going to go through like as many sound samples. We're just going to go to the kind of like two key sounds, the loud side uncompressed and the Yuh side compressed with the Cascade turned on. So let's give it a listen. Yeah, it sounds rad. I wish there was a little bit more low end, but a parallel blend or something like the Damnation Audio Dirt Fixer is probably in my near future to make this a permanent staple on the baseboard. Let's give the Cascade Yuh combination a listen. We are now getting that like really like compressed, smooth version of things. Which I also really love with like palm muted bass parts. And we have a moral obligation to do this. it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what stuck out to you the most for the Cascader fuzz. Is it the bass applications? Is it the guitar applications? Is it the uncompressed wide open fuzz? Or is it that really, really kind of clamped down Velcro sustained sing-songy fuzz? I found a lot of use in both, and I would love to know what it is that stands out to you if this is something that you are in the market for. So I'd love to hear from you down below, and until next time, thanks for watching.